Hi guys, it's Steph here. Welcome back to the Novelty Corner. Today I have some more picture books for you. In fact, I don't know how many do I have. Oh, there's more than 20 books here. So buckle in, get yourself a cup of tea. I'm going to break them down into categories. I have some non-fiction picture books to begin with. I have some titles by Indigenous authors. Actually, there are some Indigenous authors in the non-fiction books as well. I have some picture books that feature diversity and different ways of viewing the world, and then some other titles that are just really fabulous books. So we're going to jump straight into them. I'm going to talk about the non-fiction titles first. There's 4 of them. So there is Jandamarra by Mark Greenwood and Terry Denton. This is a book that tells the story of Jandamarra, a young Aboriginal man who became a warrior when the settlers first came to the Kimberley region in the northwest of Australia. He basically became an outlaw to the settlers, but he was a hero to his own people, and it's not a story that I had read before. It was shortlisted for the Children's Book Council Awards for Australia, and it was a really fascinating read. This is probably a story that is better for older children, particularly in primary school, but a really great read. I also finally picked up a copy of Azaria, A True History by Marie Cootez. This obviously deals with the story of what happened to Azaria, who was a baby who disappeared in the middle of the Northern Territory. What it does is unpack what happened at that time, the story of Azaria Chamberlain, what happened to her parents, the investigation into the baby's disappearance. It's really deeply fascinating because this is obviously something that captivated Australians when it happened. This book is beautifully told. It's beautifully illustrated. I mean, just look at that, it's gorgeous. But it does go through all of the events. And one thing I really appreciated at the back of the book is that there are facts in here, both about Uluru, which is in the Northern Territory, which is where Azaria was taken, and it features facts about dingoes, and it also includes facts about the case, so that if you're using it as a teaching book or if you are talking about it with kids, you have that information there to use as you're talking about and discussing the book. But I mean, the illustrations in this are they're just amazing. So well worth checking out if you're interested in some contemporary Australian history. The next 2 titles are by Indigenous writers. There is Heroes, Rebels and Innovators, Inspiring Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander People from History by Karen Wyld and Jaelyn. Oh, I'm going to butcher that, but I'm going to hold it up anyway so you can see it. This book features 7 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people from history whose names are not well known or may have been forgotten. We first get their story told in verse over 2 pages, and then they get another 2 pages where the facts of what actually happened and what their place in history means to the country actually is. So it's a really gorgeous book, fantastic illustrations. This is a great one to add to classrooms or to your own collection because it's very easy to read and very digestible, and a great way to learn more about the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who form part of Australia's history. The other one is The First Scientist, Deadly Inventions and Innovations from Australia's First People. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this in a video already, but I said I was going to include it in this one. This is a great book that goes through all the different sciences and the contributions of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to the sciences throughout their history, and it is just amazing and gorgeous. This is one that I can see a lot of kids really enjoying picking up, particularly if they are interested in the sciences, because that's all this is, and it is so fascinating and so interesting to read about. And also it's just visually very nice to look at throughout the whole book. Lots of bright colors, lots of patterns, and then the images that are in there are relevant to the topic. So highly recommend this one. Okay, moving into some fictional Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander books. So I have some picture books and I also have some Dreamtime story picture books as well. So there is Somebody's Land by Adam Goodes and Ellie Laing. You guys have heard me talk about this. I've got a whole video about this. I'll leave it linked on the screen. It is a glorious book. It talks about the concept of terra nullius and the idea that Australia was not inhabited when it was first invaded, whereas in fact it was somebody's land, and it deals with introducing that terminology in a very kid-friendly way, and it's just a beautiful book. Also by David Hardy, but this time written and illustrated by him, is Alfie's Big Wish, and this is Alfie, and he is one of the youngest members of his community, and all of the big kids go away to school and he's left on his own, and his big wish is to have somebody to play with. And it is a glorious, and the illustrations are just fantastic. I'm really enjoying David Hardy's style, so this one's well worth checking out as well. There is also Baby Business by Jasmine Seymour, and this one is really about a young child learning from their nana, and they're learning about the bush and about living on country, and it is so gorgeous and stunning. It features information about things that are important to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in their communities. It's just so gorgeous and so lovely, and I had not seen this book until my copy of it arrived, so I was very, very excited. So it did win one of the Children's Book of the Year awards, and it also was a notable book for the CBCA, and it was in 2022 shortlisted for the Speech Pathology Australia Awards as well. Another book written by an Indigenous author is Molly the Pirate by Lorraine Teece. So Molly lives very, very far away from the sea, but she dreams of being a pirate, and it is her imaginative story as she plays out that fantasy. The whole book is absolutely stunning. I can see plenty of kids really, really enjoying this. And my favourite part of the book, when we find out that, you know, she's been dreaming about this adventure, is finding her curled up in the laundry basket. Also, I love all of the chickens that are dressed up as pirates in this book because they're fabulous. And then the 4 Dreamtime stories I have are all by Gregg, Dreise. I think I've talked about one of these books. I don't know if it's one of these ones or if it's a 5th one that I have. There is Cunning Crow, which is the Dreamtime story about how crows became black when other birds got plenty of colours. There is Mad Magpie, which is about Koolho, who is the magpie, and the other birds always tease him, but the elders give him the advice to ignore them, even though they're still laughing at him. Sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't, but when Koolho keeps trying again, he begins to find that he can sing beautifully and how that helps him on bad days. So another gorgeous Dreamtime story. There is Kookoo Kookaburra, which is about how the Kookaburra started off telling funny stories to cheer people up, but then became a little bit too big for his britches and started telling jokes to make fun of people. And it's really around kindness and how when you throw kindness out into the world, it comes back to you. And this is a Dreamtime story I had not heard before, so it was really lovely to read a different one. And then there is Silly Birds, and this one is about Malian, who is a very proud eagle, and also Wagon, who is a bush turkey or a silly bird. And Malian always listened to his elders and always tried his best, and then one day he starts following Wagon around and starts to do the same silly things. And it's about the consequences sometimes of friendships that you make and the consequences of being silly when perhaps it's not the best time for it, and about how we learn from those situations. So again, another gorgeous story. All right, so then some books that celebrate diverse experiences in one way or another. There is My Beautiful Voice by Joseph Coelho and Alison Colpoys. This is about a child who goes to school and is incredibly nervous, and as such finds it hard to speak out and to talk in the classroom, and is sometimes teased for that. But it's about how they find their voice, and they have a really wonderful teacher. I love the teaching representation in here, but they find their voice and then they're able to join in and verbally communicate what they need and what they're thinking to the class. And there are plenty of kids like that who find it hard to speak up. And so I think this is going to be a really important book to have. Then there is Luke's Way of Looking by Nadia, Wheatley and Matt Otley. And Luke is a student at a school, and in his school he is always told to do things in a particular way, but he views things very differently. And mostly we see him in his art class and his set art assignments, and then he interprets them completely differently. And he's always told off for that because he hasn't followed the instructions. And then one day he goes into the city and he goes into an art gallery, and there he sees how artists have interpreted things in very creative, very different ways that he views the world, and he's blown away by it. And then eventually he comes back to school and he's given another art assignment, and the way that he interprets it is so different from everyone else, but is incredible. And his teacher is forced to acknowledge that, okay, just because Luke hasn't done it the way that that the teacher would have done it, doesn't make it any less valid. It's absolutely beautiful. It's an art book. It is a thinking book, and it is a huge celebration of independent thinking and being yourself. And of course, kids will bring so many different experiences to this, and you can definitely tie it into so many different concepts. There is Suri's Wall by Lucy, Estella and Matt Otley, and this is about Suri, who lives in this big old place behind a wall, and this wall surrounds this area. It's high on a mountain, and none of the children who live there are tall enough to see over the wall. And as Suri grows older and gets taller and taller, she suddenly finds herself able to see what is past the wall. And the other children, the younger children, they ask her, you know, what can you see? So she tells them stories of what she sees. But we, the reader, know that what she has seen is not what she's telling the children. And what she's seen is heartbreaking for her. And one of the adults who also knows what's beyond the wall says, you know, eventually one day they will find out what's past this wall. And she acknowledges, yes, they will, but it won't be today. And this whole book is about giving people hope. And it is absolutely stunning. And to be honest, if any picture book is going to make me cry, it's probably going to be this one. There's also The Patchwork Bike by Maxine, Beneba Clark and Van T. Rudd. This is the story of a small community that put together this bike made from things found all over the town, and it belongs to all of them. It is part of their history and it is the most fun that they have. And each page shows how they've put this bike together, what they've used to do it, and it's just glorious. So if you haven't seen this one, it's well worth having a look at. And then my last 4 books are just some general picture books. One I'm going to be using for the first day of school. There's Maddie's First Day by Penny Matthews and illustrated by Liz and Ellie. This is about Maddie's first day of school. She gets up, she gets ready for school, she has breakfast with her family, her mum gives her a big hug and goes off to work, and her dad walks her to school. And then she gets to school and she's having a great day, and then one of the other kids realizes she's brought her blankie to school and teases her about it. And so suddenly she begins to feel very small and very overwhelmed until she makes a new friend who also brought their blankie to school. And that gives her confidence to keep going. It's a real great celebration of starting school, of being in a new place, in a new situation, sometimes being overwhelmed by the changes, but it also highlights the resilience of young kids. Next year, I think, will be the 11th year that I have worked with students on their very first day of school. And it is, you know, a truly wonderful thing to see kids on their first day of school, because it is incredibly overwhelming. And yet they always manage to overcome that overwhelm and find their place. And it's my privilege to be able to see that. And so to find books that really highlight that important moment is fantastic. There is Want to Play Trucks by Anne Stott and illustrated by Bob Graham. It's about 2 kids who become friends while playing in the park. They both like different things. One really likes trucks, one really likes dolls, and it's about how they negotiate play. Again, this is a really important book for young kids. We learn through stories and we learn through play, and this combines both of them. I believe I've mentioned this in a previous video. It's a book called If You Were Here by Elizabeth Sophia. She is a Melbourne-based author. She's actually a friend and colleague of my sister, and she wrote this book for her child after his grandmother passed away. And it's about helping children to understand grief and loss and to always remember the really great times and the important memories, and it's just a truly beautiful book. And then finally, I have a new Oliver Jeffers book, because I can never turn down Oliver Jeffers books. This one is called There's a Ghost in This House, and it's about a young girl who lives in a house and she believes that it's haunted, and so she begins exploring the house. I love that it has the photographs and the blackline illustrations. It's gorgeous, and she begins showing us around her house, and each page has a color illustration and then it has a transparency. And as you turn the page, you see where the ghosts are hidden in the house. And it is truly, truly beautiful. And I absolutely loved it. And I got it after Halloween, otherwise I would have shared it with the kids then, but I'm going to take it in because I know they'll really enjoy it regardless. All right, so those are all the most recent picture books that I've acquired, which means I can now take them into school. I will leave a list of all of the books and the authors down below so that if you missed any names, you can go back and find them. I would love to hear about any new picture books that you guys might have heard about. Feel free to let me know down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.